The hidden reward system, controlling your behavior, Machiavelli and Skinner's dark secrets. What if I told you that your choices aren't really yours? That your decisions, habits, and even your deepest loyalties are being shaped by invisible forces you're not even aware of? This isn't science fiction, it's the science of behavior, and the most powerful people in history have been using these principles for centuries. Hey everyone, welcome back. In our last video, we explored how Machiavelli understood the unconscious mind centuries before Freud. Today, we're diving into something even more practical: how the powerful use rewards and punishments to shape behavior without people even realizing it's happening. 500 years ago, Machiavelli wrote The Prince, revealing the hidden mechanics of how rulers control their subjects. Then in the 1900s, a psychologist named B.F. Skinner put these same principles into scientific terms with his theory of operant conditioning. What Machiavelli figured out through raw observation, Skinner later proved in the laboratory. So grab a drink, get comfortable, and prepare to see your own behavior in a completely different light. Fair warning though, once you understand these principles, you'll start noticing them everywhere. In your workplace, in your relationships, even in how you raise your kids or train your pets. Let's start with the most basic insight that both Machiavelli and Skinner shared. Behavior is controlled more effectively by its consequences than by intentions, values, or beliefs. In simple terms, people do what gets rewarded and avoid what gets punished. This seems obvious, but most of us dramatically underestimate how much our behavior is shaped by these simple mechanics. Machiavelli understood this perfectly. He wrote, "Men are quick to change their mind about their rulers when they see themselves rewarded by unexpected benefits and punished by unexpected severities." He knew that concrete consequences shape behavior far more powerfully than abstract principles or promises. Centuries later, Skinner would prove this scientifically in his famous experiments. He showed that animals and people could be taught to perform incredibly complex behaviors through carefully managed rewards and punishments. He called this operant conditioning, the process by which behavior is shaped by its consequences. I saw a perfect example of this in a company that was struggling with innovation. The leaders kept giving speeches about the importance of taking risks and thinking outside the box. But when employees actually tried new approaches, they were criticized when those attempts weren't immediately successful. Despite all the talk about innovation, they were unconsciously punishing the very behavior they wanted to encourage. Not surprisingly, innovation remained low despite all their speeches and mission statements. This brings us to the first major principle that both Machiavelli and Skinner understood. Rewards work better than punishments for creating lasting behavior change. Machiavelli advised rulers to be strategic with both, but noted that men ought either to be well treated or crushed, because they can avenge themselves of lighter injuries, but not of more serious ones. In other words, small punishments often create resentment without changing behavior, while rewards build loyalty and positive motivation. Skinner would later demonstrate this scientifically, showing that while punishment can suppress behavior temporarily, positive reinforcement creates more sustainable behavior change. Animals and people who are rewarded for desired behaviors will continue those behaviors enthusiastically, while those who are mainly punished often develop avoidance, resentment, and creative ways to escape the system. I've seen this play out dramatically in different management styles. I worked with two division heads in the same company with completely different approaches. The first relied heavily on criticism, tight deadlines, and threats. His team worked from fear and did the minimum to avoid trouble. The second used recognition, incentives, and positive feedback. Her team consistently outperformed, showed more initiative, and actually enjoyed their work. Same company, same compensation structure, dramatically different results based solely on whether behavior was shaped primarily through reward or punishment. This doesn't mean punishment has no place. Both Machiavelli and Skinner recognized its necessity in certain situations. Machiavelli famously suggested that it's better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both, acknowledging that fear, anticipation of punishment, is sometimes more reliable than affection. Skinner similarly found that certain behaviors could be eliminated quickly through punishment, though the effects weren't always lasting. The key insight they shared was that punishment needs to be used carefully and strategically. Machiavelli advised that any necessary punishment should be done all at once, rather than drawn out over time. This aligns perfectly with what Skinner would later discover: that immediate, consistent consequences are far more effective in shaping behavior than delayed or inconsistent ones. This brings us to another powerful principle both men understood: timing matters enormously. Machiavelli advised rulers to ensure that any punishments were clearly connected to the offense, while benefits should be given gradually so people constantly have something to strive for. He recognized that the timing of consequences dramatically affects their impact on behavior. Skinner would later formalize this understanding with his research on schedules of reinforcement, the patterns by which rewards are delivered. He discovered something fascinating. Rewards given on an unpredictable variable schedule created the strongest, most persistent behaviors. Think about how slot machines work. You never know exactly when you'll win, which makes the behavior, putting money in, incredibly resistant to extinction. I watched a brilliant leader use this principle to transform team engagement. Rather than the standard predictable employee recognition program, she implemented random spot bonuses and recognition moments. Team members never knew when their efforts might be recognized, which kept everyone consistently performing at their best. Engagement scores rose dramatically compared to other departments with more predictable reward systems. This variable reward principle explains why social media is so addictive. You never know when you'll get likes or comments, why gambling is so hard to quit, and why certain leadership styles create such fierce loyalty. Unpredictable positive feedback creates stronger behavioral patterns than predictable rewards. Machiavelli intuitively understood this when he advised rulers to vary their approach, sometimes being generous, sometimes being stern, rather than being completely predictable. He knew that people become complacent with consistent patterns but remain engaged when there's an element of unpredictability. Another crucial insight both men shared was about the power of small incremental changes. Machiavelli advised that significant changes should be introduced gradually to avoid resistance. Skinner discovered the same principle through his experiments on shaping, the process of rewarding successive approximations of a desired behavior until the complete behavior is established. I saw this work beautifully in a manufacturing company implementing a major new safety protocol. Rather than expecting perfect compliance immediately, which created resistance, they broke the protocol into small steps and recognized progress at each stage. By rewarding incremental improvements, they eventually achieved full compliance with minimal pushback. They were essentially using Skinner's shaping technique without realizing it. Both Machiavelli and Skinner also understood the power of intermittent reinforcement, the principle that behaviors rewarded occasionally rather than every time become the most deeply ingrained. Machiavelli advised rulers to perform acts of remarkable generosity, occasionally rather than consistently, making each instance more impactful. Skinner would later prove through his experiments that intermittent reinforcement creates the most persistent behavioral patterns. This explains why gambling is so addictive. You win just often enough to keep you playing. It explains why abusive relationships are so hard to leave. The occasional moments of kindness have a powerful reinforcing effect because of their intermittent nature. and it explains why certain leaders inspire such deep loyalty. Their occasional recognition means more than constant praise would. I watched a manager use this principle unintentionally but effectively. He was generally quite demanding and critical, but occasionally gave specific, genuine praise. Those rare positive moments had an incredible impact on his team. They worked tirelessly to earn his infrequent approval. Was this healthy? Probably not, but it was a powerful demonstration of how intermittent reinforcement shapes behavior. Another key principle both Machiavelli and Skinner recognized was the importance of immediate consequences. Machiavelli noted that any punishment should be swift and clearly connected to the offense. Skinner would later demonstrate experimentally that the effectiveness of both rewards and punishments diminishes dramatically with delay. This insight has huge implications for management and leadership. Annual performance reviews are largely ineffective at shaping day-to-day behavior because the feedback comes too long after the actual behaviors. Leaders who provide immediate feedback, both positive and constructive, have a much stronger impact on their team's performance. I worked with one organization that completely transformed their performance by simply implementing a weekly feedback system rather than waiting for quarterly reviews. The immediacy of the feedback loop dramatically improved how quickly people adjusted their behavior and improved their results. Both Machiavelli and Skinner also understood the power of public consequences versus private ones. Machiavelli advised that punishments should sometimes be public to deter others, while Skinner observed that social reinforcement, praise or criticism from the group, often has greater impact than direct consequences. This explains why public recognition programs can be so effective in organizations. When someone is praised publicly for specific behaviors, it not only reinforces those behaviors for that person, but also signals to everyone else what is valued. The same principle works in families, friend groups, and communities. Public acknowledgement shapes group norms far more effectively than private feedback. I witnessed this principle dramatically change safety behavior in a construction company. Rather than just punishing violations privately, they began publicly recognizing safety champions each week. Within months, safety incidents dropped by over 60%, as the social reinforcement changed the entire culture more effectively than the previous punishment-focused approach. One of the most powerful insights both men had was about the importance of clear, observable behaviors rather than attitudes or intentions. Machiavelli focused on how rulers should judge people by their actions, not their words or claimed motivations. Skinner built his entire scientific approach around observable behavior rather than internal states. This practical focus offers a powerful lesson for modern leadership. Many organizations waste time trying to change employee attitudes or feelings rather than focusing on specific behaviors. The most effective leaders identify precisely what behaviors they want to see, then create systems that reward those specific actions. Attitudes and feelings often follow behavior change, not the other way around. I consulted for a retail chain struggling with customer service. They had tried motivational speakers, values statements, and emotional appeals about caring for customers, all with minimal impact. When they shifted to identifying specific service behaviors, measuring them precisely, and creating immediate rewards for those exact behaviors, their service scores improved dramatically. Focus on behavior first, and attitude often follows. Both Machiavelli and Skinner also recognized that different individuals respond to different rewards and punishments. Machiavelli advised rulers to understand the specific desires and fears of different personality types among their subjects. Skinner observed that the effectiveness of any reinforcer depends on the individual's specific history and preferences. This principle is crucial for effective leadership. The recognition that motivates one team member might embarrass another. The incentive that inspires one person might actually demotivate someone else. Great leaders take time to understand what specifically motivates each individual rather than using one-size-fits-all approaches. I worked with a sales manager who transformed his team's performance by customizing incentives based on individual preferences. Some reps received financial bonuses, others got additional time off, and others earned prestigious development opportunities, all for hitting the same targets. By personalizing the rewards to match individual motivations, he got far better results than the standard commission structure had produced. Now let's address the ethical elephant in the room. Both Machiavelli and Skinner faced criticism for their seemingly mechanistic view of human behavior. Critics argued that Machiavelli reduced politics to manipulation, while Skinner reduced human experience to stimulus and response. Both were accused of removing dignity and free will from the human equation. These criticisms raise important ethical questions about applying these principles. Is it manipulative to systematically use rewards and punishments to shape others' behavior? Where is the line between influence and control? Between effective leadership and exploitation? I believe the answer lies in intention and transparency. Using behavioral principles to help people achieve their own goals or to create positive outcomes for everyone involved is fundamentally different from using these same principles to exploit or harm others. The techniques themselves are neutral. The ethics lie in how and why they're applied. Transparency also matters greatly. When people understand the system they're operating in, when the rewards and consequences are clear and openly acknowledged, they maintain their autonomy and dignity. It's the hidden deceptive application of these principles that raises the most serious ethical concerns. For example, I worked with a healthcare organization that openly implemented a recognition program for patient care behaviors. Everyone understood exactly what was being measured and rewarded, and why these behaviors mattered for patient outcomes. This transparent application of behavioral principles improved both employee satisfaction and patient care simultaneously. In contrast, I've seen toxic leaders use the same principles in manipulative ways, creating unpredictable environments where team members never know what will trigger praise or criticism, using intermittent reinforcement to create unhealthy dependence, or using public humiliation as a control mechanism. Same principles, dramatically different ethical implications based on intention and transparency. So what can we learn from this exploration of how Machiavelli anticipated Skinner's insights into behavioral conditioning? First, that understanding the mechanics of how rewards and punishments shape behavior gives you tremendous insight into both yourself and others. Second, that applying these principles ethically requires careful attention to intention, transparency, and outcomes for all involved. For your own development, start noticing the reward and punishment systems operating around you. What behaviors get reinforced in your workplace, even unintentionally? What consequences are shaping your habits, for better or worse? Once you see these behavioral mechanisms operating, you can make more conscious choices about which systems you want to participate in and how you might design more effective and ethical systems yourself. If you're in a leadership position, consider how you might apply these insights ethically. Are you clearly identifying the specific behaviors that create success? Are you providing immediate, meaningful feedback? Are you primarily building through reward rather than suppressing through punishment? Are you transparent about what you're measuring and why? Next time, we'll explore how Machiavelli anticipated another major psychological framework, the dark side of human personality, and how to recognize manipulative individuals before they cause harm. We'll look at how his insights align with modern research on personality disorders and manipulation tactics. If you found this valuable, hit subscribe and share your thoughts in the comments. Have you noticed these behavioral principles at work in your own life? What reward systems have shaped your behavior, either positively or negatively? Let me know below. This information is provided for educational purposes only. The goal is to help you better understand behavioral psychology and improve your leadership skills, not to manipulate others unethically.